Keeping your empire happy on Civilization 5 is easy as long as you follow a few simple rules. In this video, I've got 7 tips to show you to keep your empire happy on every game, every time. And at the end of the video, I'll tell you how each of these individual tips work on the individual difficulty levels. So stick around to find that out as well. I'm PCJLaw from twitch.tv/PCJLaw, link in the description below, and these are my 7 tips for keeping your empire happy on Civilization 5. These are the individual tips that I use every game, so you know that they work. Let's get on to tip 1. Tip 1. You can found cities up to the number of unique luxuries that your empire will have in total. That means that 5 sugar counts as 1 unique luxury. This does not mean that every city needs to add an additional unique luxury. It simply means that you can continue founding cities up until the number of cities that you now have equals the number of unique luxuries that you can get from those cities. You can violate this rule, but only for cities settled after the National College. Cities settled before the National College, they tend to live and die on the unique luxuries that they have available to them and the trades for your duplicate luxuries that you can do with the AI or other players in the game. They just don't have the time to build things like circuses and Colloseums, but after the National College, they finally do because they've become good enough. So you can violate the rule, but only really do it after the National College, because before then, your cities will live and die on the happiness and you simply won't have enough. Tip 2. Settling your regional luxury. In the map generation, each player gets assigned to a region of the map, so 6 players would be 6 regions. Each of those regions of the map then gets assigned to it a unique luxury that becomes your regional luxury. The goal is to get a monopoly on your regional luxury, such that then you can trade the AIs or other players in the game duplicate for duplicate. So a duplicate of your regional luxury for a duplicate of their regional luxury. That means that regional for regional trades are the second of the 2 main ways that you can get happiness in the early game, with the first of course being from just improving unique luxuries for yourself, and the second by claiming extra unique luxuries by trading away duplicate luxuries of the ones that you already have. This is the first of the tips which is actually less viable on lower difficulty levels. On Deity difficulty, you will never have problems finding an AI that's got a duplicate luxury to trade for your duplicate luxury. The AI won't trade non-duplicate luxuries 1 for 1. However, on Prince difficulty level, because the AI takes longer to improve their resources and they take longer to settle their cities, it takes them longer to get duplicate luxuries up. So, on the lower difficulty levels, you actually have to rely more on your unique luxuries, and you can rely less, sadly, on AI trades. Fortunately, on lower difficulty levels, you don't have to do everything as fast, which means that you can afford to find time to build things like circuses or Colloseums, or even getting a city-state ally if you need it. At the worst, you can probably just found 1 or 2 fewer cities, make sure to have a good above 1 in terms of unique luxuries 2 cities, and then you'll be okay. Eventually, and on higher difficulties, in particular Deity difficulty, the number of your regional luxury that you actually settle can make a difference in the number of cities that you can actually handle for yourself. Having 5 copies of your regional luxury versus 2 copies of your regional luxury makes a big difference in the amount of happiness you can trade for, such that the rule that we talked about earlier for 1 city per unique luxury doesn't actually hold up. The rule is more that you need to have about 2 to 3 copies of your regional luxury to be able to go 1 city per unique luxury, and any additional regional luxury you have over that 2 to 3 actually then allows you to get an additional city as an exchange for the unique luxury. So you can go 1 city per unique luxury, but only if you have 2 to 3 copies of your regional luxury. But if you get a 4th, a 5th, or even a 6th copy of a regional luxury, or of course you start to get duplicates of some of the other ones, you can exchange those for extra cities too, and change the rule from 1 city per unique luxury to 1 city per unique luxury, plus any bonus or excess duplicates of your regional that you actually have. This works because not only does settling more of your regional luxury give you more of your regional luxury for trade, but if you don't settle your regional luxury, the AI certainly will. And so that AI that settles your regional is not someone that you can trade duplicate for duplicate for. So it serves a dual purpose. You acquire more of it yourself to trade, and you also give yourself trade partners by stopping the AI from settling it themselves. Tip 3. Securing luxury deals. This means securing a deal for yourself even though you won't actually benefit from it yet. This means trading away the last copy of your luxury for an AI or another player's luxury, even though you don't have a duplicate yet, but you will get a duplicate luxury online eventually. And this means paying for gold per turn or whatever it is you need to trade, be that like iron, horses, something like that, to the AI for their spare luxury when you won't have anything else to, or a duplicate to trade to them with. This is good and correct for 3 reasons. Firstly, the Deity AI will literally never go unhappy, so you do not have to care about giving them free happiness. The only person that benefits from the deal is you. Second, the AI can and always will trade with another AI, so if you don't secure the deal, then it may never ever come back on the market, and this is an important point. And third, you will need the happiness. You will need every single bit of it before turn 120. So don't sit there and think, oh, I don't want to do this because you know what, another luxury is going to come up. It won't. When you have the opportunity to take a deal, secure it because you will need every ounce of happiness you can get when you're trying to grow. Just remember, the benefit to you is the guarantee of having that deal. You know you've got it and you can improve a luxury to get it, or it just costs you gold per turn or something like that. It's not that you don't get any value from it straight away or for the turns where you're not actually gaining the luxury. You are. The value you gain is the guarantee. You are going to need the happiness, so make sure the deal is yours. And while we're here, if you're enjoying this video, please do leave a like. It greatly helps the video out. And now, on to the rest of the tips. Tip 4, Circuses, Colloseums, and Circus Maximus. Circuses, Colloseums, and Circus Maximus are buildings which you're going to have to build every game because you will need them no matter what. If you plan to grow and you plan to have cities, you will need to build them. Colloseums are available in every city, whereas circuses are only available to cities where the city's own border has expanded to a source of horses or ivory. This is an important point because if you find that you've got an ivory regional luxury, you're going to have more circuses available to you than someone who doesn't have ivory regional luxury. At least there's a reward for having to go for a trapping luxury that's otherwise not that great. You should build your circuses and colosseums preemptively in every city because they will take several turns to build. Don't build them when you are unhappy because you are now losing out on crucial time that you could be using to spend growing. I always talk about the growth window as being turn 60 to turn 120 on quick game pace when you're on deity difficulty and multiplayer. If you're unhappy for even 5 turns, that's 1/12 of your whole growth window that you're not growing in, or something like 8%. So what's the golden rule? Typically, when your happiness is just above or gets down to being equal to the number of cities, that's when to start building circuses and colosseums everywhere. The reason the limit is set like this is because typically in the time it takes for you to actually build a circus or a colosseum, it can be 6 to 9 turns for some of your slower cities when you're on something like deity difficulty. So 6 to 9 turns is about the amount of time it takes for you to grow once. That means that your empire would actually, if you started building the Colosseums when you were below happiness equals to number of cities, all of your cities are going to grow once and you will actually go unhappy before you complete them. The only way to make sure that you don't go unhappy before you complete them, aside from ticking avoid growth, which frankly is just as bad as going unhappy, is to preemptively build them when your happiness is just above being equal to 1 for each city. There's actually a technique in terms of the order to build them in as well, because you could choose, if you've got a circus available, you could choose to build either a circus or a colosseum, but there is an easy rule to know which one to build first. In your highest production cities, you want to build the circus first and the colosseum second. In your lowest production cities, you want to build the colosseum first and the circus second. This is a bit counterintuitive because you might have heard advice to say, build a circus first because it's cheaper. However, the reason this is not quite so good, or the reason why I don't do it, is because Colosseums are required to build the Circus Maximus National Wonder. If you go Circus and then Colosseum in a really low production city, that city is going to hold you up from building the Circus Maximus. It will delay it by loads. However, if you build the Colosseum first, then one of your higher production cities can start on the Circus Maximus much earlier, and you can get the bonus from the Circus Maximus an awful lot earlier, and that's 5 happiness, as opposed to being slightly faster to get 2 happiness with a circus. Tip 5, city-states for happiness. Super high-level play tends to heavily involve the use of city-states, and that's because city-states give you things over and above what you can generate in your own empire from your own land. So pay attention to city-state quests. Definitely always try and get the luxury, strategic resource, barb camp clearance, and road quests. Sometimes try to complete trade route and build a wonder quests. The reason you don't want to do trade route or build a wonder quests all the time is because sometimes building that wonder simply is not helpful to your empire and is actually detrimental. Similarly, most of the time you will require that trade route as internal food, but when you've got a spare trade route, or when you've got some spare time to produce a wonder, or they desire a wonder that you actually want, then you can try and go for those quests too. The reason city-states give you happiness is because the city-state gives you a copy of their unique luxury when you become their ally. So if a city-state has got wine and you don't have wine, you become an ally with that city-state, they now give you wine, and you get the +4 happiness from having an additional unique luxury. And that's an important point, because when you're aiming for a city-state to ally, you should check what its luxuries are. Does it, what does it have? Does it have silver? Does it have wine? Does it have salt? Does it have whales? If you are going to try and ally a city-state for happiness, you need to make sure that it's actually going to give you a unique luxury that you're not already getting, either within your empire or via trades. The one wildcard to this is the mercantile city-state. The mercantile city-state gives you 3 happiness when you become friends with them. You get the happiness when you become friends and not allies. Getting an alliance doesn't give you any extra happiness for a mercantile city-state. What it does do is the mercantile city-state gives you their unique luxury, and they give you their special mercantile city-state unique luxury, which is something like jewelry or porcelain. So the maximum happiness that you can get from a mercantile city-state is 11. The 3 from the friendship, the 4 from their unique luxury, and then another 4 for their special mercantile city-state luxury, but only if you don't have any of them. Tip 6. Religion for happiness. Pagodas and religious centers are 2 of the top tier religious beliefs in the game. Pagodas give +2 happiness when you buy them. Religious centers give you +2 happiness from temples. They are the top tier because you get +2 happiness from each of the buildings. Peace gardens, garden happiness, mosques, and shrine happiness are the next level down of religious beliefs for happiness, and that's because peace gardens, you can only build gardens in cities that have access to fresh water. Normally, not all of your cities will have fresh water, and mosques and shrine happiness is only 1 happiness per each. They're the next level down because they're not quite as good, but you can still get decent amounts of happiness from them if you need it. If you decide that you don't have enough happiness from unique luxuries plus regionals, the rule that we talked about earlier, then you can choose to go for religion to make up for the happiness gap. The one caveat I will put in is that to get the happiness from your religion, you need to actually build the buildings. Sometimes shrine happiness can be a great choice because it's really easy to build shrines in your cities. Again, the reason why religious centers or temple happiness is so good is because temples is a building that's already a good thing for you to build. So when you can get happiness of that, it makes it a must build and a fantastic building. Something like pagodas or mosques, this is more difficult, and that's because it actually costs you faith to buy pagodas and it costs you faith to buy mosques. You can't buy them all straight away. You can't get them when you want them. You are restricted to only getting them when you actually have enough faith to buy a pagoda, and then you have to wait to build up the faith and do it again. Pagodas is one of these things where oftentimes only when you've got 15 to 20 faith per turn by like turn 60 is oftentimes the only, on quick speed, is often the only time when you can actually afford to go pagodas for happiness, because that's the only time when you're actually going to be able to get all 4 of them or all 5 of them before the cost starts getting ludicrously expensive, but also get them early enough to actually make a difference for your growth. Otherwise, they kind of help, but we remember that the most important period to have it in is turn 60 to turn 120. If you've only got 2 pagodas by turn 120, those pagodas are not useful to your growth during the growth window, and you would have been better with temple happiness. Tip 7. World wonders for happiness. This is a fun one. Chichen Itza gives you 1 unique luxury's worth of extra happiness. So that allows you to support 1 extra city over the unique luxuries plus duplicates rule that we talked about as part of tip 2. However, Chichen Itza gets built only after you've researched civil service, which means that, again, because your cities will live and die by the number of unique luxuries and duplicates they have in the pre-national college period, the city that you're going to support with the Chichen Itza, you can only found after your national college and probably after you've actually built the Chichen Itza, which is actually fine because you don't want to found a city expecting to get Chichen Itza happiness and then lose it. Notre Dame gives you 2.5 luxuries worth of happiness. It gives you 10 compared to 4. Again, Notre Dame, it allows you to found 2 additional cities, which is perfect. But once again, Notre Dame you can only go and found those cities once you're relatively sure of being able to secure Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a bit easier because you can take for metal casting instead of civil service and immediately go to Notre Dame Tech. Again, you should wait though, because if you found 2 cities in the expectation of getting Notre Dame and then lose it, you're not going to be happy ever again. The one nice thing about Notre Dame, and I guess to some extent Chichen Itza, is that even if you're not actually going to use it to found extra cities, even though that's the best use for it, you can also use it to prevent yourself from having to build Colloseums or Circus Maximus or something like zoos in each of your cities, which is actually a powerful bonus in and of itself. It's just a bit better to actually use it to found extra cities. Finally, Taj Mahal is another happiness wonder. It gives you 1 unique luxury's worth of happiness. However, Taj Mahal comes too late to actually be impactful to your turn 60 to turn 120 growth window. Taj Mahal cannot be considered for founding extra cities. It just means that you'll probably avoid having to build something like zoos, which is actually useful. Finally, you cannot rely on getting these world wonders every game. This is one of these tips which is actually better for the lower difficulty levels and worse for the higher difficulty levels. On Deity difficulty, you should pretty much assume that you are never getting Chichen Itza or Notre Dame, and you may get Taj Mahal if you go and rush specifically for it and are having a good game. Whereas on multiplayer and on even frankly on Immortal and below, these world wonders are now much more available to you, particularly Notre Dame, so you can start to incorporate them as part of your strategy. That wraps up this guide, and now for the thing that I promised at the start of the video. Which of these tips are more applicable to which difficulty levels? So tip 1, unique luxuries equals number of cities. That one is applicable to every difficulty level, however, it tends to be a bit more applicable to Deity as opposed to Prince. On Prince, you're probably going to want to have number of cities is number of unique luxuries -1. So if you've got 5 unique luxuries, you probably want 4 cities, not 5 like you might manage on Deity difficulty. And that relates to tip 2, because tip 2 was your regional luxury, or having a regional luxury allows you to support more cities, or claiming your regional luxury allows you to better support your happiness. On Deity, we're able to use tip 2 to make an addition to the 1 unique luxury per city rule, which actually then allows you to say 1 unique luxury per city. But if you've got 2 to 3 copies of your regional, and any extra copy of your regional over that might allow you to settle an additional city. That, sadly, does not apply if you go down to something like Prince level, or even really Immortal, or sometimes Emperor difficulty level, something like that, because the AI takes longer to get those luxuries improved. Instead, again, if you're on Immortal, you actually probably want to ignore tip 2 a bit, although settling your regional luxury is obviously important, do it, but you cannot use the bit that allows you to found extra cities. You probably want to go back to the number of cities is number of unique luxuries -1 rule, because you're going to struggle to get that happiness from the AI. And that is again because your cities before the National College will live and die on the happiness that you get from your unique luxuries and luxury for luxury trades. You can go up and meet that rule after the National College, but your founding before the National College should be an awful lot more cognizant of your number of unique luxuries number. Tip 3 was securing luxury deals, and that's actually relevant to every difficulty level. When you see a luxury become available, you should always go and deal for it as long as you've got the capacity to do so. That, again, we said it meant trading away a duplicate that you will get online eventually, or just paying flat out gold or horses or iron or something like that for it from the AI. You're always going to need it, do it. This one's applicable on every difficulty level. Tip 4 was Circuses, Colloseums, and Circus Maximus. This is generally something that I advise for every difficulty level, and advice that I often give players that are playing on Emperor or Prince or even Immortal sometimes, is to really pay attention and work hard to get your Circuses and your Colloseums and your Circus Maximus built really quite early on in the game. It might even be the next thing you build after a library in your expansions while your capital goes away and builds the National College. However, it's kind of applicable to all difficulty levels. You are going to need them when you're on Deity, same as on something like Emperor or Prince. The difference is that because you can get slightly more trades with the AI on Deity difficulty, then you don't actually need the Colosseums quite so desperately. You get a little bit more breathing room, whereas you're going to have to work really hard to get them built on lower difficulty levels. Tip 5 was city-states for happiness. This is something that's applicable on all difficulty levels, but I would suggest it's easier to get those city-state allies if you're actually playing on a lower difficulty level. That's because it's easier for you to complete all of the quests, or some of the quests, particularly Barb Camp quests. You might even be able to get something like a trade route quest, just because the AI isn't kind of fighting over the city-states quite so strongly as you would, and because you've also got some more time, maybe on the lower difficulty level, you can save up some gold or something and go away and tribute some city-states for the gold. But actually, it's probably one of those which lies a bit more in the sweet spot of Emperor and Immortal. On Prince, that you probably won't be able to do enough quests for city-states, or some of them anyway, because you won't be able to do those Lux for Lux trades with the AI. But on Deity, the AI fights over the city-states too much that you'll struggle to become consistently allies with some of them. So the sweet spot there might be more Immortal or Emperor. Tip 6 was religion for happiness, and this one is more viable the lower difficulty level you go, and that's because religion is more viable the lower difficulty level you go. On deity difficulty, even if you're generating +8 faith per turn from your pantheon, sometimes you won't get a religion, and sometimes the AI will just turn up and spread their religions to your cities anyway, and you won't get it everywhere. Whereas on prince difficulty, it's very easy to guarantee yourself a religion via a wide-ranging amount of means. So the lower the difficulty, the easier it will be to get the religion, or the easier it will be to get happiness from your religion. Just pay attention to whether or not pagodas is suitable for you, or actually whether or not something like temple happiness is a much better pick, because you don't have to spend faith to build it. And tip 7 was world wonders for happiness. We spoke about this as part of tip 7, but obviously building world wonders is easier the lower the difficulty level you go. So world wonders for happiness, much more applicable the lower the difficulty level you are, and you should basically give up on tip 7 if you're on deity, sadly. Once again, I'm PCJLaw from twitch.tv/PCJLaw, link in the description below. That brings us to the end of this video, so do leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It helps other people find the video and helps the channel. If you want to hear about when other videos in this series are being released, then do hit the subscribe button. There's plenty of content on the channel too. And finally, if you have any comments on this video whatsoever, you're always welcome to leave them in the comment section below. I've been PCJLaw, and I'll see you next time.